Welcome to Salesology, conversations with sales leaders, the art of faster, easier, more profitable sales. When you're ready to transform your sales for today's transforming market, we've got you covered with your host, the queen of cold calling and founder of Salesology, award-winning author, speaker, sales trainer, and coach, Wendy Weiss.
Hi, welcome to Salesology, conversations with sales leaders, the art of faster, easier, more profitable sales. And I'm your host, Wendy Weiss. I am the founder of Salesology, creator of the Salesology prospecting method, and I'm also known as the queen of cold calling. Today, my very special guest is Brian Feenie, and he is the president of ShiftLogic. Brian is an accomplished sales and implementation leader in the HVAC and construction industry with 30 plus years experience. And he specializes in HVAC technology, SaaS, and product. Welcome, Brian.
Thanks, Wendy. Happy to be here.
Well, I'm happy that you're here. So let's begin at the beginning. Tell us about your journey. How did you ultimately become the president of ShiftLogic?
Wow, it's been a career in the making. You know, it's funny. Over the last 30 years, I think probably 20 years in, my wife was encouraging me to eventually go out on my own and become a business owner. And you know, at the time, I didn't really know what that was going to be, right? Because I've always been in, you know, sales leadership roles and some product management roles where I never really saw myself as an owner. And so, you know, I've always wanted to challenge myself to continue to learn and always, you know, embrace new technology. That's obviously one of my specialties. So back in February, of all things, I was actually speaking at a conference in Florida, and I was working for Google Nest at the time, and I come to find out that I actually got laid off with 10 other people. So ShiftLogic was a dream in the background, you know, for probably the last 18 months, and what, you know, that life change, a life event on a Friday afternoon at 4:00 in Orlando, Florida. I live in Philadelphia. So for me, I had a lot of thinking to do, and I was around a lot of wonderful people that were very inspirational to me. And so the plane ride home with my nervous wife was really mapping out ShiftLogic to be a very unique business to serve the HVAC community, specializing, like you mentioned in the opener, in technology and software. And I took that leap of faith. And to me, you know, what could appear to be scary was also something that was kind of refreshing, because I got to be my own boss. And so short 30 years, long 30 years, but you know, I feel that experience over my career, from, you know, when I think back to 1994, when my first role was on a loading dock, stocking shelves, and really trying to figure out what I was going to do with the rest of my life as a college graduate with a marketing degree, all came to, you know, this magic moment where, you know, I'm 52 years old. I'm just taking a leap of faith and facing, I wouldn't even call it fear. I just knew that I had to do it. And so, you know, even at that time in February, I still didn't know what the business was going to be, other than I knew I had sales and sales leadership skills. I had marketing background. So I figured I could find my way.
Okay, so walk us through that process, that thought process that you had, that you found out you'd been laid off. There are a lot of people that upon finding out they'd been laid off would pull out their resume and start updating it. But you didn't do that.
Nope.
So to help our audience of, you know, potential business owners out there, people that are thinking, well, maybe one day, what was your thought process that instead of pulling out that resume, you said, okay, I'm going to launch a business?
I had a couple relationships that I was doing some consulting work for that I leaned on heavily, and I said, look, I have the opportunity to do this. I need to know that you're with me. And I knew at that time too that it was now or never. And Wendy, I will tell you, I was very tempted to pull out that resume and update it. And but at this time in my life, I said, you know what? I still got a lot of road left. I'm going to go for it, and really leaned on those two partners or folks that I was consulting for, and started to blossom those relationships further to where I could pay some of the bills, and quickly leveraged all those relationships I've had in this industry for 30 years. And now I'm with 7 clients that I serve in various roles, whether it's product advisor for a software company or fractional sales leader, fractional sales implementation. There's a lot of things that I'm doing. I'm a trainer for an organization as well that I travel all over the country. So it was like drinking through a fire hose. I was really trying to embrace as many opportunities as I could in a short amount of time, because at that point I needed to provide for my family, right? So there's no bigger motivator than that, right? And knowing that I had to lay it out all on the line. And there was some partnerships that I started out early that I really, that didn't work out. But now 9 months later, everything is very clear on how the business is designed and the type of value I can bring to other businesses that I serve.
Okay, you said something about leveraging existing relationships, and I think that's always an interesting conversation. What did that look like? These were people, companies that you knew that you'd worked with previously. What were the steps that you took to go kind of from almost nothing to where you are now?
It was I was very selfless and I wasn't shy, so I just had to ask for opportunity. Who do you know? Where do you see any other friends or industry colleagues that could utilize my services? And one of the companies I work with, measureQuick, Jim Bergman, the founder of that company, was very gracious to spread the word through his network with advocacy, and actually wrote a few paragraphs about what he knew of me and working with me, on what we were doing before all this happened. And I got 2 other clients from it. So he was a big part of, someone believing in me and believing in my talents, and wanted to share that and wanted to encourage others to give me an opportunity or a chance to do the same for them. And so, you just don't know until you ask of how good your network is, really. And it's something that I've always taken very seriously over the years, was to really be intentional about building that network of folks, because you just don't know when you have to leverage or ask for help, or ask for some type of collaboration, because things happen, right? Large corporations can eliminate jobs any day of the week, and unfortunately, not everyone's safe in this working world. So I'd say about 7 years ago, Wendy, is when I really started to double down on my, leveraging my LinkedIn connections and putting content out there, and making sure that I would try to avoid ever being in a situation where I was without work. And so I was very fortunate to have Jim advocate for me and introduce me to as many people he felt that I could make a difference for. And so that to me was hugely valuable. And as I've grown the business over the last 9 months, because it's been like really like a massive sprint, has been the optics are very favorable because I'm working with a lot of folks. I'm sharing my experiences and the things I'm doing, and I'm using LinkedIn as my sales diary, right? And as I've been traveling all over the country, that credibility starts to build really big. So again, I'm also planting the seeds for tomorrow.
Absolutely.
And because when you look at building businesses through partnerships or relationships, not all of them last forever. So, and there's always times where it's like, okay, well, we've run the course and it's amicable and mutual, but it's like, okay, now what? So I always want to make sure that I'm building this backlog or future, I guess, sales funnel, so to speak, of opportunity. And so I've got my sights on revenue goals. I know exactly where I want to take the business. And I've got a lot of gas left in the tank. It's been an adjustment because it's required a lot more travel. But I'm providing for my family at a level now higher than I've ever done. So it's been pretty transformational from that perspective, and also understanding private healthcare and how to take care of that.
Yeah, that's a whole other. won't even go there.
Yeah.
But the one big thing that leaped out at me and everything that you were just saying was that you asked, which I mean, fundamentally, that's what sales is about, right?
Yep.
And he or she that does not ask does not get.
100%. And that, it's my daughter's 21 and she's in her junior year of college. And early on when she could understand that concept, you don't make 100% of the shots you don't take, right? It's very similar to if you don't ask, you don't get. And so watching her grow and develop as a young woman, and she's pretty shrewd in her professional career, even though she's still in college. I watch the things she does and the risks that she takes in her life and job opportunities that she's pursuing. And if I could leave that legacy for her, I think it's amazing because that's providing her the tools to have unlimited success, as I see it. Because I think that's the price of entry, right? You either ask or you don't. And in my years, early years in selling, it was, I'll never forget. And I think we talked about this before, was I was the young guy in a mature industry trying to figure out how to be, how to have a career in sales. And in the construction industry, you're uncovering any rocks that you can find to try to find an opportunity to do commerce. And I remember walking through the mud through a job site and my shoes practically falling off as I'm trying to walk into a home over a wood beam to get from the mud into the house. And there's no steps in the homes at this point. And but there's the plumber or the HVAC guy who doesn't know who I am, and I just happened to show up. But the fact that I walked through the mud and asked how I could serve them turned into, my early days of learning how to ask, right? And success has always come. Now there's been ups and downs, like there is in sales leadership at any time, because we don't live in a utopian society. You can wear rose-colored glasses every day and stay optimistic, but you have to develop a pretty tough skin because and when I coach and mentor younger sales reps, there's a lot of highs and there's definitely a lot more lows in a sales career. And you have to celebrate those small wins along the way. So like when you can capture those, you know, if it's asking to move forward with a sales relationship, then that's a small win. Or if it's transactional, well, that's a win, right? And those types of things of kind of coming full circle. That Friday afternoon in Orlando in February, it all culminated into that. Like, I'm just going to ask. I'm just going to go for it, and put the fear aside and know that if I stay focused, it was going to all work out.
So continuing on with this theme of asking, when you were just starting out in sales, did you have that fear that, I mean, so many new salespeople are just, they're very afraid to ask. So did you experience that as well? And if you did, how did you get over it?
Yeah, great question, Wendy. I feel that early on, when you're kind of cutting your teeth and finding out who you are as a salesperson, you have a tendency to give a lot of yourself on a personal level to that potential client and not always see you can't always see what's happening. And what I mean by that is you could feel like you have the best relationship, you're going out to lunches or you have all the bonding and rapport, but no sales are happening. And then they go and buy from someone else, and now you're out. But they still want to be your friend because, I find a lot of times they like you too much and they just don't know how to tell you no. And then you feel that big letdown, right? And it can put you in a slump, or you can say, well, I need to eat. So I need to figure out how to grow and start to take this seriously, I guess you could say. And it wasn't until a number of years in where I started to learn about the personality profiles as it relates to selling, similar to DISC and, understanding how to interact with people. And I found that very interesting. And I wish I would have learned it earlier in my career because I learned it probably 10 years in, which is okay, better late than never. And I would encourage anyone listening to this, if you're young in your sales career, get a DISC assessment, learn where you're at in the quadrants and take it seriously and actually master it. Understand who you're talking to, every single interaction. Like, where do they fall? Understand who you are and how do you meet them where they are. And the psychology of selling to me is really what put me at another level in my career, not only with selling to clients, but also working with my sales teams over the years, working with internal customers, meaning coworkers, and even at home and personal relationships. That the things you can learn in sales training become exponential impact if you take it seriously. And to me, that was the aha moment that I wish I would have learned 5 years in. But it's okay because I know folks that have learned it, but they don't embrace it and they don't own it, or want to master it because they just figure it's another seminar, it's another training thing I have to do to check the box off. And I found it made sales and sales leadership to me so much more enjoyable. And I will always point that out as something that was pivotal in my career. Was that happening to me?
So you mentioned managing a sales team, and actually one of the questions that I asked you in preparation for doing this interview, I said, well, what drives you crazy about managing a sales team? And your answer was that each member is unique in their needs and wants. And even though you may have built a particular sales culture, it doesn't run itself. Sales can be an intense mental game, which brings out emotions. if you don't pay attention as a sales leader, the sales team can change the culture while you are not looking. So could you expound on that a little bit? The managing a team, and because you're right, each member of that team is a unique individual with their own, you know, craziness and rationality and motives and emotions and everything.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and I think I learned what I didn't want to be through other leaders that I reported to over time. And I'll kind of point that out with, you have to pay attention to your team, like personally and professionally, I believe. Like you need to know the motivators on, like, especially when you're hiring, do they believe in the same types of things? Because I feel that like that attitude over aptitude becomes very important in hiring today, especially with sales teams, because you can usually teach the product or the value proposition or the transactional thing that is being sold, but you can't teach care. You can't teach being genuine and some of the core qualities that someone would have, but also showing that you actually care about their success. Example, I've got one of my prior direct reports thanked me a year after I had left that particular company. He's like, "Hey, I just wanted to thank you for, supporting me so I could get to this level," because he had gotten a promotion. I was like, "You don't have to thank me." I said, "You're the one who did it, right?" And he's like, "No, but you cared enough to help keep me motivated and and teach me and how to navigate a large organization, or how to take care of others within the organization, how to take care of customers, and serve at a higher level." And I was just transferring the things I've learned onto my direct reports, because I feel that if we all believe in the same thing, we're all rowing in the same boat, going in the same direction, and have a shared common goal. At least you would imply that you would, right? Or feel that you would. But to get that direct feedback, even after I was departed from that particular company, and he attributed his success to working with me years prior, I said that was like that aha moment, like, oh wow, I actually made an impact on someone, right? But he even left that company about 2 years ago into an even larger role. And he said, "Hey, I couldn't have done it without you." And I was like, "What do you like? Wow, really?" Like that? Because I know, when you're a sales leader, you're there to serve your team. It's not about you anymore. And I had an old mentor tell me that. And he's like, because I had early on in my career, I always said I wanted to be a sales leader. Like I was dead set focused on that. Didn't really know why or understand what the role would look like. And my mentor, who was my boss at the time, said to me, he's like, "Look, just know when you do this, it no longer becomes about you, it becomes about your team." And I was like, "Okay, sure." Just give me the job. And then, but I early on, I saw that, because when you come from sales and you grow up and evolve and become a sales leader, sometimes it's hard to shed that sales ability when you could just say, "Oh, I'm just going to go out and do it. Because if the team needs help, I'm just going to put on the sales shoes and I'm going to hit the road too." But you're really not doing yourself any favors at that point. You might be able to lead by example a little bit, but it's too easy to get caught up in selling again. And as a leader, you need to lead that team and teach them how to be more impactful if they're struggling, or help accelerate what they're already doing. And I believe that's when I started to work. His name was John, and when I started to work with him, he did not come from the HVAC industry, because that's what we were in at the time. And I remember him telling me, he's like, you took a chance on me. And I was like, "No, you were actually the person I wanted. I didn't care that I knew I could teach you an industry. but I couldn't teach you to care about people and to be thorough and follow up. And, some of the core, foundational things you would observe when you're interviewing someone and doing, checking on their career history. And that to me was really where I started to realize that I was taking the right approach to sales leadership. So that team, as I said, the different personalities, you really don't always know how you're impacting someone's life and their family. So, I've always managed through, I don't need to be their best friend, Wendy, but I do need to make sure that I understand as much as they want to share with me what's going on in their life. And I tend to be more consultative and mentor than to be hit the numbers, and just work it off a sheet of paper. Now I'll get it. It was a small team. Now if I was managing 100 people, which I've never done, but if I was, it's different, right? Because it's hard to get to know all those people at that intimate level. But those out there that may be listening that are managing smaller teams, to me, that is the most important thing, is to really understand, what makes your people tick. Not everyone's the same. Everyone's got unique things going on in their life. And I feel if you can relate or identify, you're going to get a lot further with that team.
And if you're a sales leader, if you're a real sales leader, you're changing people's lives.
Yeah.
And that's a wonderful thing to be doing.
I get more gratification out of that than the actual hitting the numbers, because I think the numbers just come, right? If you're doing the right things, displaying the right behaviors, take care of the customer, the byproduct is the growth in sales.
Right.
The other piece is, you're changing lives, you're impacting lives. That's what this is about. That's what sales leadership's about to me.
Absolutely. So, Brian, if people want to get in touch with you, people want to connect with you, where should they go?
LinkedIn.
Well, that's where we met.
That's where we met. Yes.
Yeah.
And that I'm very active on there. I feel that it's a great platform when it's used effectively.
Mm-hmm.
And I really do feel it brings personality to our professionalism. LinkedIn is definitely the best way. And I always look to, meet and collaborate with new people. And it's funny. I met some folks. I was traveling, doing some work in Dallas, about 3 weeks ago. And I met a group of salespeople that, don't work for me. And I was there doing some training and some, and sales, I guess, value proposition, education. And during the end of that session, Wendy, one of the territory managers or salespeople came over to me and said, "Look, I'm not sure if you have the bandwidth, but I would love it if you could be a mentor to me." And meanwhile, I had just met this gentleman that morning, and I was like, "Absolutely!" Like, I said, "But it's going to be up to you to take the next step." I said, "Sure, I'll help you as much as I can. Please contact me." And so, but he never contacted me, which is okay. Maybe he still will.
Implementation is everything.
It is. And so, but again, maybe it's that experience or inexperience. They were fairly new in their career. He asked, right?
He did ask. Virtual gold star for him.
But didn't follow through.
Didn't follow through.
No, that's the Achilles heel there. But that's okay. Maybe he will resurface at some point, and I'll be there with open arms. But that to me is, I look forward to connecting with people at any level. It's really, I feel that I if I can give back to leave some sort of legacy. And it doesn't have to be in the HVAC or HVAC industry. It could be in any industry. I'm always very open and intrigued to learn new things all the time. So I'd be happy to connect with anyone in any type of industry.
Okay. So to connect with Brian, finish listening to this podcast, and then Brian's LinkedIn profile, the link to Brian's LinkedIn profile is in the show notes. So as soon as you finish listening to this podcast, go to the show notes, click on the link, connect with Brian. And you have been listening to Salesology, Conversations with Sales Leaders, with my very special guest, Brian Feenie, who is the president of Shift Logic. And if you found value in listening to this podcast, please think about one sales leader, one business owner, one entrepreneur, somebody that you know that you think might also find value in listening to this podcast. And please do share the link with them. And until we meet again, visualize yourself surrounded by cash, really large bills.
You've been listening to Salesology, Conversations with Sales Leaders, the art of faster, easier, more profitable sales. Be sure to follow so that you don't miss a single episode. And while you're at it, please leave a rating and review, and be sure to share it with your friends. Tune in every week for more exciting insights and wisdom on transforming sales. And until next time, visualize yourself surrounded by cash, very large bills.